Hello folks, one and all. Today I want to share with you an amazing experience I had as a 10-year-old in Silicon Valley in 1959. This is the end of September 2019, and I want to get this out as I'm getting older. So I want to make sure that anyone's interested has a chance to hear this. So I'm just going to kind of close my eyes and go back to 1959 and tell you this story. So my parents had divorced, and my sister and I lived with my father up in Marin County, where we had a lovely little house on the water, actually on the bay. And my father remarried to a woman who lived down in Menlo Park. And they talked us out of leaving that house because the new stepmom had a nice swimming pool in the backyard. So anyway, we moved down there. Of course, I'm just 10, so I don't know what the hell's going on, but I'm down there, and we were just about 60 meters or so from the creek that runs in between Menlo Park and Palo Alto. On the other side of Palo Alto was the Stanford University, which in 1959 was just huge. You know, I don't know how many acres of barren land. So at any rate, my stepmother had rented out two of the bedrooms to graduate students, after her first husband passed away. So having graduate student type people living in the house wasn't any big deal. And so we moved in, and my sister and I each had our own bedroom. And shortly after, a man was introduced to the family, and his official name was Nathan Klajkaujihai. But we called him Yogi. And he was a beautiful physical specimen that I'd say was either, 36, 38. Very strong, but round-tummied and very fine physical specimen. And he said he was Indian, East Indian, and he wore tuxedos. I think he only had tuxedos and then some shorts and a little summer shirt that he wore around. But we met him. He was wearing his tuxedo, and he wore a big purple silk turban with a huge gem right over his third eye. And he was a yogi, and so that's what we called him, was Yogi. And he and I shared a room together. We had twin beds in there, and he began tutoring me in a whole variety of subjects. And it started off, he hypnotized me many times. Of course, the whole family knew this. And he said that he had regressed me back into past lifetimes, and then proceeded to tutor me in those subjects that I was apparently professional at in past lives. And the biggest one was architectural drawing. Under his guidance, I did completely professional architectural full perspective drawings at 10. Many. And I remember the last project we did was two big pieces of drafting paper taped together. It was this huge, big panoramic, full perspective view of a single story house kind of thing, the stuff that was popular in the late 50s, early 60s. But of course, at 10, I didn't really think too much about this, but I remember there was quite a buzz in the family about it. And at any rate, he tutored me in a whole lot of things, including mental telepathy, where he'd have three little pieces of paper, and one of them had an X on it, and showed me how to focus and where is it, and I'd tell him, and blah, blah, blah. And he also tutored me in polarity therapy with the hands and the feet, because the hands and the feet each have over 72,000 nerve endings. And so for those that don't know us, for example, if you have a stomach ache, you can massage certain parts of the feet, especially, and the hands, and help that stomach relax. But anyway, this was in 1959, and of course, I didn't think much about it either. He tutored me in physical therapy in general. My stepmother had some issues with a ligament in her leg, and she walked with a cane. And anyway, he had me massaging her, and he taught me about the polarities in the hands and the feet and different things. He taught my sister tap dancing, and We played music together, and he was just an amazing character. He was a vegetarian, although he ate eggs. And I can remember many a weekend he would make these big soufflés with just like scrambled eggs on the bottom and then put it under the broiler and cook the eggs from the top. And anyway, he lived with us for, I'd say, 2.5 to 3.5 months, something like that. It was a long period of time. It was a big deal. He was a wonderful guy, and although he said he was East Indian, I could see he was really an African stock. And he had kind of kinky, when he had his turban off, he kind of had kinky, wavy hair. And, you know, I know now as an adult, I know Indians versus Africans, and Nathan was definitely African, although he spoke a beautiful Oxford English. And he was an incredible guy, a big light in his eyes and his smile that would light up the room. And many, many amazing things happened. Like I remember one day walking into the bathroom. He and my sister and I shared one bathroom. Our parents had their own in the master bedroom. So I walked into the bathroom and there was Nathan shaving his very coarse beard with a flexible Gillette razor blade in his hand, just shaving away like this. Of course, I didn't think a thing about it at the time, but as an adult, I realized, holy Toledo, you know, who the hell can do that? So I should tell you, after the 2.5, 3.5 months of this whole adventure where he hypnotized and taught all this stuff, the night before he left, he hypnotized me out by the pool, and he told me that he had come from another planet and that he had come to help prepare me for my life's work. And that's what he was doing there in the house, tutoring me, and he tutored my sister a little bit too. The emphasis was on me. She was only 7.5. So at any rate, a lot of amazing adventures ensued while he was there. And I remember at one point we were having a family party where there was, you know, maybe 8 or 10 adults there, and somebody had said, well, they had heard that yogis from India could put needles through their cheeks. And everybody was saying, come on, hey, come on, Yogi, do that, do that. And he didn't really want to do it, but they wanted to do it. So he said, okay. So they went and they got a darning needle, you know, a big darning needle that was about 3 inches long. So it was quite wide too to support that length. And he just pulled his cheek out and went around and started working it in there and pulling it out through the inside. This was right before our eyes. There was no way that it could be faked. And it took him several minutes, maybe like 10 minutes to do the whole thing. He got it through and pulled it out, and there was absolutely not a speck of blood. There was no red to be seen anywhere. And immediately upon the needle passing through, the skin on the outside closed. You couldn't see a hole. So that was pretty cool, even for a 10-year-old. But again, I didn't think all that much about it. But not long before he left, the one test I failed was he and I were in my bedroom and working on something on the drawing deal on my desk there. And then he said that he could change forms. And that was pretty far out. Of course, again, as a 10-year-old, I don't know. Maybe all those big people can change forms. But anyway, he said he could change forms and you want to see it. And I said, yeah, okay. So all of a sudden, we were sitting there and the vibration in our immediate environment, you know, just started going like, yeah, I could just feel this. I remember the hair on my arms stood up on end and my neck, and I was like, whoa. And I kind of freaked out and ran out of the house, ran up the street, over the street to a friend's house and said, Nathan, he was going to change forms and all this stuff, you know. So anyway, I guess that got back to my parents because it wasn't too long after that Nathan moved along through our family, you know, up into San Francisco, and to some friends of my family who had a big lunch restaurant there called Wilkie's, right on Market Street. My father and stepmother, they had an employment agency in the Phelan building there, and then they also had a large A&W on the Palo Alto border, I think was Santa Clara or something. Anyway, big A&W there. So Nathan, for all his talents and amazingness on a lot of levels, you just love the guy. He was a bright light. It was like having a glowing being in your house. So, but he wasn't shy of working, man. I remember once we went to the A&W and he was over there helping my father prepare for a health inspection, and he was in, of course, in his shorts and a shirt. He was just on the floor and scouring, and just he was like the best worker you could ever imagine. Because now I understand he was just like having fun. This is like, wow, I get to clean a dirty old fucking A&W kitchen. Wow, what a cool thing to be able to do. Seems like that was his attitude. So, and then when after he left, and my parents took him to this Wilkie's on Market Street, who they were friends with, and he did the same thing there. They were preparing for a health inspection, and Nathan was tearing this kitchen up. He was like a kid in a candy store, He was really going after it. I was blown away. The way he was working. Then all of a sudden, 12 o'clock. He went up to the balcony. I mean, this was a big place. They probably served over 1,000 lunches. It was only a lunchtime deal, so from like 10:30 till 1:30 or something. People early or late lunch. So Nathan, 12 o'clock, he went up to the second story where they had a huge grand piano. He sat down at the piano and just started playing this incredible music. No sheets, just playing it. And he played for an hour straight, and it was just like incredible. But again, as a 10-year-old, I had no real perspective of how incredible that all was. So anyway, after this long experience, and he hypnotized me, and he told me that he'd come from another planet to prepare me for my life's work, and he put that into my subconscious. So I didn't think about it. Again, I didn't remember it again till 1974, and that's when I fully remembered it, although somewhere in the middle, in the late 60s, I ran into a high school friend of mine one night, and he said the night before he was out in West Marin, and a big UFO had appeared right in front of him and shot like a laser light right down to his forehead. And he was telling me this story. And when I remembered that, when he told me that, I remembered about Nathan. I said, fuck, Nathan. And, I told him all about Nathan and my whole experience. And then he was gone again. I never thought about it again till 1974 when I was living in the fjords of Norway. But that's a little farther down the line. Let me jump back here. So Nathan's gone. My parents' marriage only lasted a year or so. And then when I was in the 8th grade, I was 12, 13 years old. And my best buddy and I found ourselves down at the Santa Cruz amusement park, Playland by the beach or whatever it was for some reason. Remember, Nathan had taught me about concentration, mental telepathy and concentration. So here's my buddy. Of course, I hadn't thought of Nathan in all those times, right? So my buddy and I are in the line for the bumper cars. And all of a sudden, I had this really strong feeling that bumper car over there, it's got $20 laying on the seat. And I was real excited. I told my friend, hey, God, there's going to be $20 laying on the seat. And he's going, yeah, how do you know that? So anyway, I very intently followed this thing through the whole cycle of them running around bumper cars and everything. Remember, it took a lot of concentration because those things are kind of chaotic. So anyway, the buzzer's up and they get up and run out, and I ran as fast as I could right for that bumper car. And there on the seat was a $10 bill. And I picked it up and I thought, oh, shit. It's supposed to be a 20. And anyway, stuffed it in my pocket. And we went on, and of course, that was like 1962. So my buddy Steve and I, we had a great time spending that $10, which was quite a bit of money at that time. So anyway, I didn't think about Nathan. I didn't think about it at that time. Only when I ran into my friend who later became a quite famous lawyer. So here I find myself living in the fjords of Norway with my little sweetie pie wife on the southern side of a big mountain overlooking the fjord and blah, blah, blah. It was just gorgeous, and all alone. And I was already, been through the whole flower child thing, and I was really interested in trying to help save this planet that these idiots that were running the place didn't seem to know what to do. You know, I was so naive, I just thought they were ignorant. I didn't understand that they were doing that shit intentionally. So anyway, nonetheless, I found myself hibernating in the deep, dark Norwegian winter. I wanted to understand more about our human animalness and how we react, how that animal reacts to the deep, dark northern winter, where you don't see any direct sunlight for 6 weeks. You get like the dawn. It's like a dawn where there's kind of a light come up 10:30 in the morning, and then by 2:30 or so, it's getting dark again. So anyway, in the middle, during this winter's hibernation, you know, I'm ended up just going with my feelings. So I'm only eating fish and roots, potatoes and carrots and turnips and cabbage and fish, a lot of fish, all steamed. And so then in my meditation, I started hearing these like angels talking to me and teaching me. And so I eventually started writing it down. And of course, this was like the winter of 72, 73. I had never heard about automatic writing or anything, but that's what I was doing. I would be there with my eyes closed, and they're teaching me this stuff, and I was writing this stuff down, you know. And they eventually gave me a whole system of what I called social physics. And I remember the first one was knowledge is power. And number 2 was learning is never what one expects, which was a central part in the teachings of Don Juan also. But anyway, you know, I was doing this amazing stuff, and then I'd go to sleep, you know, have a couple hours sleep with my wife, and then wake up, and I was telling her this stuff, and golly, after, you know, 2 months into this, I'm thinking, in the morning, I'm waking up and thinking, am I going crazy? What's going on here? And of course, my wife's wondering what's going on with. Anyway, one night I was doing this meditation, and I looked in the candle and I saw Nathan's face. I think he had his turban on too. I saw, you know, remember, I had never thought about him since 1959. This is 72, 73. And I see this face, I instantly know it's Nathan. And I remembered, it was like somebody turned the lights on in a dark room and you can see everything. I remembered all these things about Nathan, and it was a big deal. It was the middle of the night, and we had a friend visiting, and I woke everybody up, and we dug out the frozen currant berries, and I ran up to the neighbor's farmhouse who owned our little house too. And I scooped off about a half a gallon of cream off the top of his milk cans. And we had a big party in the middle of the night with sugar all over these kind of sour currant berries. And the berries are frozen, poured sugar on it, and then poured pure cream over it, and it all froze instantly. So we had a huge celebration in the middle of the night about remembering Nathan. So from that time on, you know, I spent quite a few years, you know, thinking about this whole thing with Nathan. I didn't return to the States until 1975. And as soon as I got back, I asked all the adults that knew him as an adult what they thought about it and what was their experience of Nathan or Yogi. And my sister told me that she could remember one night she was in her bedroom sleeping in a dream. And she said, Nathan came to her in her dream and said, Chrissy, open your eyes and come out into the living room. And so here she was in a dream. She, without changing consciousness, she just opened her eyes, got out of bed, walked into the living room, and there was Nathan sitting in the lotus position in this chair, smiling and nodding at her. And it's just like she knew that he knew, you know. That was a pretty mind-blowing experience, to think that there are beings that can actually go visit you in your dreamland and interact with you. And so another amazing thing about this was my uncle. My father wasn't a real deep thinker. He was a wonderful, wonderful father, an incredible single parent, but he wasn't a very deep thinker. So, but his older brother was. So I went and asked my uncle about this, and he was quite a smart guy. This uncle of mine, he was He was the head claims adjuster for the Navy for the entire Pacific Ocean region. So he was very smart. He had a huge responsibility, and he was an amazing guy himself on a whole nother level. So when I asked him about Nathan, he said that immediately upon hearing Nathan speak, that he himself was awed into silence. He said he just wanted to shut up and absorb everything this human being was saying. He appeared to be a human being, you know. So anyway, my uncle, who was a super smart guy, was just blown away by the vast intelligence of old Nathan Klachkowski. So that was a great reassurance that it was all real. And everybody knew him. And like I said, he lived with us for several months and blew everybody away. So he had tutored me in the design, which of course is part of, you know, my thing now. And I don't want to reveal too much because I want to stay anonymous with this. And that's why I'm asking Mary to blur out my face for this. I don't want to wake up one morning with 1,000 emails in my box or anything. I'm living a very low-key, peaceful life out in the countryside, on the edge of a small town in the middle of Southeast Asia somewhere, where I've been for over 2.5 decades. So that was my story about being visited by Nathan. And actually, that also happened at the exact same, within that exact same 3-year period that Thor, Valiant Thor, and Amma and Elder Dan arrived at the Pentagon. I'm sure people in consciousness movement are aware of this, where the U.S. government was given an announcement that they would be arriving at one of the military bases just on the edge of Washington, D.C. on a certain time and a certain time. And they sent a limousine to pick them up, and the spacecraft landed, and Thor, sometime referred to as Valiant Thor, and Amma and Elder Dan got out, came into the car, and they took them to the Pentagon, where they lived for 3 years and tried to convince these fucking idiots that run the planet that we can convert this mess into a paradise for everybody. 3 years, they couldn't do it. They were too focused on that. We're in a Cold War, and those are the bad guys, and we got to build up the military and get ready to kill people, you know. So that happened at the same time. And then years later, in 1974, that was after I left Norway, but before I returned to the States, I was living in Switzerland. And I was living there during the exact same time when the Pleiadians first made conscious contact with Billy Meyer, who, that's a huge story. If anybody doesn't know about it, they can Google Billy Meyer. He's still alive and today. Amazing guy with an incredible story and vast amounts of evidence and all sorts of stuff. But I'll mention this one thing, because at that time when I was getting ready to come home, I didn't know about it. He was only, 100 kilometers away, but I hadn't heard of this story whatsoever. So I'm going to come home from Switzerland to California, and the first thing I had was just a flight from Switzerland to New York. And I arrived in New York. I had no idea how I'm going to get to California. And I went to some window, I made some inquiries, and all of a sudden I found out there's a seat available on a flight to LA that's going to go by way of Dallas. I said, well, that's okay. And they said, hurry up, you just got a few minutes. So I remember running through and carrying my portable therapy table and my duffel bag with all my clothes and my conga drum in it, and ran out there and got to where I had to go, and came around the corner into a big, one of those big buildings where all the different ports are. And I could see down, it was about 150 meters, 200 meters away, the number of my gate. And I'm coming around, I'm looking for the numbers. I see the number, and there out in front of the gate is this woman that from that distance, I couldn't tell her age or anything about her. But she was like jumping up and down and looking over at me, and she was excited. It was like she couldn't contain herself, like she just wanted to jump out of her skin. She was so excited. And of course, I was hustling down there carrying this whole thing, and I had to check him in at the gate and whatever. It was a long story, but I got there, and she was staring at me, and it turns out she was an absolutely gorgeous female with brown hair, and she was just a 10. She was just absolutely lovely in every way. And I didn't put it together. I was kind of a jet lag just from a long flight from Switzerland. And I'm just happy that I made it there before they closed the gate. And there was this gal, and she got on the plane too. She was all excited to see me. She was trying to contain herself, but very tuned into me on every different level. And we kind of went on the plane together, but we weren't sitting together. So anyway, after we got up to cruising level, I went to go to the bathroom, and there she was standing at the back row of all the seats. It was like she was waiting for me. So anyway, we made a conversation, and we had a lovely interaction together for quite a long time. And I remember I was I was tempted to get off the plane in Dallas with her. It was that, amazing of a person. But I'd been in Europe for about 4.5 years, and I had this ticket. I'm already ready to go home, so I went on with it. But, I've often thought no one knew I was going. And especially, I didn't even know I was going till I got there to the airport. And here's this gal. It's like they knew where I was going. I'm convinced she was one of the Pleiadians who was somehow guiding me along the way. She knew that I would eventually figure it out, because it was an impossibility that anyone could possibly know other than someone who was tuned in on a psychic level. So that's my a quick review of the experience I had with Nathan. But what this brings up for me, and then probably some of you will be wondering the same thing, is what does it all mean? Why? Why would they come and tutor me? Why would they come to anybody and share information and somehow try to nurture me along with my path? And then, like I said, he put it into my subconscious, because during the 60s, in the middle of the 60s, if you started talking about an extraterrestrial had visited you and tutored you, well, there wasn't a question about it. They'd lock you up in the nut house. So I got past all that, and I didn't remember till the 72, 73. So, but as I said, I do want to remain anonymous, or I could mention some of the amazing things that have happened in my life that hopefully will affect a planet in a positive way, and even some of the projects that I have going now that could create huge, wonderful benefits for all of humanity, and including financial. I'm interested in helping the people on the bottom climb up. Not the old trickle down, but the trickle up. Let's get everybody on some kind of a basic earthling survival mode, where people aren't doing so many of the horrible things that are happening all over the planet just for basic survival, like those poor natives in Africa that are poaching elephants and rhinos and God knows what, they only get a few dollars for that shit. The people that make the money are all the dealers in between. In the end, it may be, tens of thousands of dollars for an elephant tusk, but this poor guy that went out and killed it, he may only get $20, $30, $50. So anyway, that's what I'm interested in, is bringing up the bottom so that they're fed and have a good life, are happy, and raise happy children instead of the complete madness we have going on now. So with that, to all of you, I want to say thank you very much for hearing my story. Now here I am back in Southeast Asia in September of 2019. So I would say Matakwiyasi, which is the American Indian saying for we're all related, for all my relations, and also the Hindu saying, which is Tatvamasi, which is almost the same sound with exactly the same meaning, means you are that, which both of those that mean we're literally physically connected to everything in the universe. And of course, science has proven that recently. And finally, I will say Namaste, or I honor the God within you. I know we all have that spark of love and light within us all. And if I can do anything, it would be to help bring that out. Happy trails. Okay.